Thank you, Jyotikar Prabhu. Maheshwar Prabhu.
Namam Vishnu Vidaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamane Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pacharane Nivashesha Sanyavati Pashkata Deshtarne. Dear Srila Prabhupada and all the assembled devotees, bear with me for a couple minutes because my glorification of Prabhupada is going to come at the end of this little story that I want to share with you. And the story is, when I first came to Ojai, I had this conception. I think a lot of people know that in Ojai, I refer to it as the California version of Sedona, because we got every New Age thing going on in Ojai you could possibly imagine. And I thought that that would be good, because I had the impression if you're in the New Age, well then you're one step away of becoming a devotee. But actually it says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada translates the verse about Shankaracharya. He says, if you take up the Mayavadi impersonalism of Shankaracharya, your spiritual life is doomed. And that's what most of these New Age organizations have done. And Prabhupada came here to save us from Nivashesha Sunyavadi. So after spending 20 years pounding my head against the wall trying to break through to some of these people, I figured, okay, let's go a different route. And that different route made me realize, because we recognize, and Prabhupada repeated many, many times, that we accept anybody who's reaching out to God. We're not so concerned. If they're ready for Krishna consciousness, fine. But if there's some other tradition, then he encouraged them, okay, follow that tradition. And if you're really sincere, it'll bring you to Krishna consciousness. So I said, okay, instead of trying to deal with all these impersonalists, maybe we need to go for the, neophyte devotees, which would be the other traditions. So this kind of opened the door for me to start visiting with some of the other religious institutions in Ojai, which are churches and synagogues and that sort of thing. And actually we've been doing that. My wife and I have been doing that for the last year. And it's a little bit daring maybe, and you think, well, how is that going to work out? But what it's done is it's led us to meet the ministers, meet the congregation, and eventually led us to places where they talk about God the way they know how to talk about God, which is a little hard to sometimes bear with, but they are actually expressing their devotion to God in the way that they understand it. And what that's done is it's opened up the doors, especially if you go to a Bible study or something, and we find out what's really going on in the hearts and the minds of these people in these other traditions. And believe it or not, we've had people who are very high positions in these other organizations say things like, well, I'm not even so convinced the Bible is the Word of God, because there's so many conundrums in there, and we all know, I don't have to go through them all, we all have some sense of that, that's why we're here. But it's really revealing that these are the leaders and high people in these different institutions. And it even got to a point where somebody actually said, I don't even know if there is a God. I think of God as a social, institution that we all kind of agree with so we don't kill each other. But as far as understanding God or having any real context to who he is, and certainly the concept of a personal God, was completely beyond his ability to grasp, which led me to think more and more. And I think some of us are very aware of Mother Teresa, who was in Calcutta for many years, and she died in 1997. And of course, she got a great reception in India. But, and then the Catholic Church ordained her as a saint. And then her biography came out in 2007, 10 years later, and in her biography, it was revealed that she had all sorts of dark nights of the soul and wasn't even sure if God existed after basically spending her whole life trying to heal the poor and deal with the impoverished people in Calcutta. And there was in the 1500s, there was a great St. John of the Cross wrote a story called Dark Night of the Soul, where he was also saying, I don't even know if God exists. I'm having some real dark clouds. This created a real problem for the Catholic Church. Well, how can we have a saint who is basically admitting she doesn't even know that God exists, or she's not sure he exists? So what they're talking about is Kanishta Adhikari, somebody who's practicing, but when you push their faith, it's like, well, maybe it's not as strong as they're making it look. And so, but then how do you reconcile that? You reconcile that with, well, actually it's good that they're admitting they have some doubts, because then all of you, you're not saints, you might have doubts too. So keep pushing on. And it sort of makes sense, but this is where my glorification of Prabhupada comes in. Because I was thinking about it, and we don't have that problem. I mean, all the way back, as far as you want to go, or let's just start with the 6 Goswamis. Does anybody think the 6 Goswamis were even hesitating about the concept of a personal God? Or look at our whole lineage, our whole parampara system. Every one of them, all the way down the line to Bhaktivinoda Thakur and the Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and of course Srila Prabhupada. Does anybody in here think that for even one moment Prabhupada had any doubt who Krishna was and what his qualities were? And that's what we were attracted to. He wasn't a Kanishadikari, he was an Uttamadikari. And these sort of things are the realizations that you have when you get out there and start poking around a little bit. And I know I'm speaking for myself. Sometimes I just take for granted all the incredibly magnanimous qualities that Srila Prabhupada has. And just, oh yeah, I'm a disciple of Prabhupada. But actually, in this case, it's really overwhelming. We don't really stop and think about it, but there's so many people, and this is, of course, why we have book distributors out there, what our whole mission is about. Prabhupada came, we chanted every day, Nivar Shesha Sunyavadi, to go out there and knock on the doors, even in these other religious institutions, and say, look, you may not admit it, and you're putting on a good show, but a lot of the people in these other institutions are not even convinced about the fact that there is actually a personal God. And that's what Srila Prabhupada gave us. And that's my tribute. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maheshwar Prabhu. Bhargava Prabhu. Now we're at 13 minutes after 12.